Hello and welcome, or even hello again and welcome back. This project took on a life of its own and just grew out of all proportion to what I'd expected. So this is part one of a two-part offering in an effort to keep the videos to an acceptably short length. So, where are we off today then? Well, we're going to attempt to follow, as closely as possible, the line and the history of a little known, now derelict canal spur off the Erewash Canal, which was the Nutbrook Canal, between Stanton by Dale through Little Hallam and Kirk Allen to Shipley, a total distance of some 4.5 miles. Well, to begin with, let's start with a little bit of background. Just a short walk down the towpath of the Erewash Canal, heading south from Ilkeston, is the site of the starting point of this video. Lock 65. Lock 65 is what is now known as Stanton Lock, which over the years has had many names including Junction Lock, Nutbrook Junction Lock and many others besides. Just a few short yards distant to the north lay the junction with the Nutbrook Canal. These days that junction is far from obvious. Much of the canal in this section was within Stanton Ironworks and was filled in during 1962. Anyway, let's get back to the beginning. The first section on the canal has been filled in to enable the expansion of the facilities at the now defunct Stanton Ironworks. Number 1, Stanton Lock, and number 2, Black Saddle Lock, are now long gone, although a few small clues survive to show the original route through the site, and it's these remains, and a few others, which we will be following throughout this video. Our story begins in 1791, when Edward Miller Mundy and Sir Henry Hunloke, who owned many of the mines in the area, wanted to build a canal. So application was sought in 1792, with approval eventually being granted by Parliament in 1793. The canal was completed 3 years later in, yep, you got it, 1796. Progress at the site continues to this day, close to the site of the Black Saddle Lock. Many of the technological advances which obliterated the canal have since been obliterated themselves by plans for newer technological advances and future developments, such as progress. However, it was to survive, at least in part, until 1949, when it finally closed. Rather ironic, therefore, that it was the last surviving working part of the canal which would be the first to be filled in. The canal followed the course of the Nutbrook Valley. The Nutbrook itself was frequently diverted and occasionally harnessed. Its original intention was to service the collieries in Shipley and West Hallam. although other uses were found for it during its lifetime. When it first opened, it was a profitable concern, but with the advent of the railways, the subsidence from the local mining, water supply issues, and customers failing to pay their agreed tolls, the writing was on the wall, and the majority of the main line was closed and left to return to nature. This, the southern end, however, was still open, navigable and used by the Stanton Ironworks to remove slag from the furnaces all the way up until 1949, when it was finally closed. Small sections of this part are still extant, but the site is being heavily developed, which will bring much needed employment into the area. So how long these relics will last is up for discussion. The main line was allowed to fall into disrepair and was eventually declared derelict. Stanton Ironworks, however, was still very much a going concern at this point. They still required a reliable water feed, so a pipe was laid in what used to be the canal bed in order to feed the site with the water which it required to continue operation, and the course above it was filled in. Quite a large section of water is now used by the local Stanton Fishing Club. Originally associated with the ironworks, it is now a thriving club used by local fishermen. Several sections of water are owned and maintained by them. Nutbrook was a broad gauge canal which could take barges up to 73 feet in length and 14 feet 3 inches in beam. Originally it was built under the supervision of Mr. Benjamin Outram, a man well known around Derbyshire for work on and with canals, railways and factories. This weir, which is on the original site of lock number 3, the old furnace lock, is one of the better preserved locks on the canal. In fact, apart from the gates themselves, much of the structure is still intact. The footpath, which is associated with the route, makes use of many different pieces of the industrial remains of the area. At different times the path can be the old towpath or actually on the canal bed, and from time to time it follows the route of the old mineral railway system, which was also here. These are all literally intertwined, so that often it isn't actually obvious which particular piece of infrastructure you're walking on. The fourth lock on the system appears to be underneath the back gardens of some of the bungalows on the Kirk Allen estate and is very well hidden from the casual observer. However, some diligent searching through some rather boggy ground will reveal not only what remains of the original structure of the lock, but also any leaks which may be in one's footwear. Although it's not a very pretty sight these days, being used, as these things are, as a casual dumping ground. In 1895, the canal operators informed the mine owners that, as many unpaid accounts were still outstanding, they would lock the canal, which they duly did. Repair and renovation work ceased in 1896 when the canal began a steady decline. Further along the route is Kirk Allen. This is where the 5th and 6th locks were situated. Some evidence is still in existence of number 5 in the form of the lock walls, which today provide a pleasant wall at the side of the footpath. Lock 6 is just a short walk along the line, quite well hidden in the trees, but once noticed it is unmistakable, and the eastern wall at least is quite well preserved. As time has passed, nature has reclaimed what was a heavily industrialised landscape. Feeder reservoirs have now become things of beauty and a haven for wildlife and for struggling photographers who are desperate for a good shot to slip into one of their videos. Several abandoned arms have left traces which can be discerned if you're looking for them. Arms which would have gone off to wharves for loading bricks, coal and other produce, but now long deserted. Well, as this is significantly longer than usual, I'm splitting it up into 2 parts. So for now, we'll say goodbye. If you'd like to, please go onto the YouTube channel, like, subscribe and, if possible, leave a comment for me. Don't forget to have fun and most of all, to stay safe. See you in part 2.